the Forrest Gump movie and that role for you in '94 with Tom Hanks. That was a seminal moment in your life and career, and it's impacting what you're doing now with veterans. Can you talk about that?
Well, playing Lieutenant Dan was a great honor. He was a Vietnam veteran. I have Vietnam veterans in my own family, and I felt very fortunate to get the part. Having worked with Vietnam veterans prior to that, when the opportunity came along, I jumped at it, and luckily I got the part. And little did I know that at that time, once the movie came out, which will be 30 years ago next year.
Wow.
I would be introduced to the Disabled American Veterans Organization, which represents, at that time, it was about 1.5 million wounded veterans. Now it's over 2 million wounded veterans that they represent and advocate for. And I was introduced to that organization back then. That really started me working with our wounded. And then after September 11th came along, we started having a new generation of wounded coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. I just wanted to do something to support them. So I started visiting them in hospitals and supporting organizations that were working with them and trying to help them. And that all kind of manifested itself into the eventual creation of my own military and first responder support foundation, the Gary Sinise Foundation, which I launched in 2011. We're in our 13th year now, and we're going strong.
So this is Lieutenant Dan Taylor in the movie. And by the way, 30 years ago, I saw that in theaters with my aunt and mother, by the way. That's unbelievable. It's almost 30 years ago now. Lieutenant Dan loses his legs. How do veterans, I should say, particularly veterans that were wounded in battle, how do they respond to seeing you?
I remember very, very clearly the first visits that I made to the hospital shortly after the Iraq War started, and we started having a lot of wounded coming into the hospitals. And I remember very clearly my first trip to Bethesda Naval Medical Center in D.C., which was, that happened to be September 11th, 2003. And I walked in, and there was a young Marine who had lost an arm and a leg and an eye, and he looked at me, and he didn't know my real name, but he knew who Lieutenant Dan was, and
wow.
And he needed somebody to talk to him at that point. And I sat there. He was the first person I visited on that very first trip. I sat there for about 45 minutes and talked to him about the story of Lieutenant Dan and the positive story of Lieutenant Dan, where he comes out doing well at the end and moving on with his life. And then I started visiting all the other rooms, and it was very powerful, and that kept me coming back all these years later.
Well, I think we're happy that Lieutenant Dan didn't die on the battlefield. That was not Lieutenant Dan's destiny. I know that you are donating a house this weekend, and then you've got a big performance in Las Vegas, I believe, where you're saluting veterans and our troops. You've performed for troops all around the world. Tell us about what this weekend looks like for you.
Well, Veterans Day, there's always a lot going on Veterans Day. We have an annual event that we've been doing in Las Vegas called Salute to the Troops. I do it in partnership with American Airlines, who flies in. This year, we have over 80 wounded coming in to Las Vegas for a 3 or 4 day event, and my band always plays for them. I've been doing this for many, many years now. Big event.
Yeah.
We take them to Bubba Gump Shrimp Company for dinner, and then band plays on Fremont Street for them. And at the same time, on Veterans Day, we're giving away our 89th Specially Adapted Smart Technology home.
Wow.
To wounded Marine Jose Armenta in the San Diego area. So this is our 89th home we've done over the years, and couldn't be prouder of the team and the people that donate to the Gary Sinise Foundation.
That is unbelievable. Again, it is the Gary Sinise Foundation. We appreciate all the work that you've been doing for such a long time, Gary. Keep it up. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.